Welcome, everybody, to the lounge. Yes, Real Deal Media's original series is back. This is the return, and tonight we have quite a journey to tend to. Yes, it's true. Yes, tonight we're going to be getting into the mysteries of Iran. And Iran's one of those countries that you think you know because of just the repetitive narrative in talking points that has been said over the years, at least since the 1970s, about exactly what this country is, who this country is, and who the people are. But now more than ever is a very important time and a great time to look into Iran. It's a huge player. It's a kind of a proxy pawn for the superpowers of the Far East in trade negotiations with the U.S. and the West, and some unusual new alliances, and just a whole plethora of different kind of attributes and very viable, just kind of just descriptions of who the new Iran is today. So we're going to get into a lot of that. So joining us tonight is the cast here, the Real Deal Media cast, and that's going to be probably our captain of the night, and that's going to be Lisa Duthie. Lisa Duthie is going to be steering the show tonight, Lisa. Yes. And I love your color coordination with the wonderful portrait behind us. Very good, Lisa.
Completely unintentional, but here we are.
Yes, I even have my Iranian beard for tonight. See, I get in character, don't I? Also joining us, too, is Jalumbo Duthie. He is going to be joining us on the Iranian journey here as we get to the bottom of the mysteries. Hello.
I brought my beard as well.
Yes, his beard's invisible. That's how good it is. It's so good. So, and then finally, also joining us is a man who has actually been to Iran. Has just tremendous amount of good friends there, and almost collaborated with me on something very Iranian, which we'll talk about, but a little fresh perspective on the whole thing. So he's going to be joining us on this journey as well. That's the one, the only, Real Deal Media's legendary Jim Fetzer. Hello, Jim.
Dean, delighted to join again.
Yes. Delighted indeed, or as they say in Iran, salam alaikum. Salam alaikum. So that's thank you very much. So I was trying to learn all these different languages. But Jim, before we get started on this journey that Lisa Duthie is going to be steering the midnight train tonight, you've been to Iran. You have a lot of friends down there. Maybe you can share your experience of what Iran is, because a lot of Americans hear the name Iran, they think of terrorism, they think of war, death, violence. But your experience is a little different. So maybe you could share how that was and when was that?
Well, I participated in the New Horizons conference in 2014, where they brought leading intellectuals from all around the world to discuss issues related to 9/11 and other horrific events and get a multiplicity of perspectives. Iran is a great nation with an ancient history that goes back thousands of years. We tend to forget that America is relatively young compared to Iran. We have 250 or so, but they have 2,500. They're 10 times older than the United States. It's a very serious nation with a deep culture and individuals who are highly creative, very capable, and also a peace-loving nation, unlike, alas, our own, where Iran has not launched an attack on any other nation since 1775, Dean. And just to put that in perspective, the ratification of the Constitution began in 1787. George Washington was elected our first president in 1789. So for longer than the United States has existed as a constitutional republic, Iran has not launched a war of aggression against any other state.
And yes, and I want to speak on that. I want to show. Do we have his picture? Oh, okay. Here's Jim in Tehran, Iran. That's the capital. There's Jim, and it was a wonderful conference. And yeah, I think he has that shirt on now. I think the red shirt. Oh no, he doesn't. It's the blue. I'm colorblind.
I was sitting next to Senator Mike Revelle from Alaska. I met Thierry Mason, who's one of the world's great public intellectuals. It was a sensational event.
It was. So, okay. So here's the objective for tonight, and we're going to get started into this right away. And we're going to cover everything from the 1953, the installment of the Shah, to the revolution, to something major that's happening today. But let me just set it up, and then Lisa, prepare to blast off here in a second. So there's something major happening in Iran right now, and it's affecting women, and there's a total media blackout all over the world across the media landscapes, corporate and small, except for us. We have a lot of nerve to get into that, but Lisa's going to tell us about that as we flow through this little jungle cruise into Iran. But the main objective is to show the West that it's not necessarily the Iranian people that might be violent or bad. No, it's actually governments across the world. So when we look at China, it's not necessarily that, we need to go kill Chinese. But we have to understand who the technocratic dictators at top are, how they're using their own people as shields and using them as cannon fodder, and vice versa. We want people to look at the Americans in the U.S. as innocent people that don't know about a lot of these proxy wars, these CIA wars that have been happening for decades. So overall, that's kind of my point is, overall, people are really good deep down inside, in full transparency. There's a huge amount of Persians in Los Angeles, in Southern California. They became part of the culture there. So they really, truly are beautiful people. And I think they win a lot of beauty contests, the women. So I just want to throw that out there. But so that's what we're trying to look into tonight. We'll take some inquiries as we go. And we'll get into the Iran Contra, and we'll talk about Bush Sr. too. He's going to be coming up, and we're going to have to hold Jim back because he's got a lot to say about Bush Sr. Right, Jim?
Yeah, I just want to add a note. Iranian civilization goes back to 7,000 BC. In other words, this is a truly ancient civilization. We're just young kids on the block compared to Iran.
Yes.
They're quite a very talented, very well-educated people, and they're being oppressed. It's actually disgusting what's going on in Iran.
There's some oppression.
Yeah, quite a good education. They've got different talents, but they're not allowed to do anything. It's actually probably in some respects worse than China.
Well, we don't want to give it away too fast, Lisa. We want to let people think that it's a free society that's very polite and just fun to be at. So let's not give too much away, but I'd love to go at some point. Anyways, so let's get started here. We're going to have we got a a whole presentation for everybody here tonight. And all right, Lisa, you are on. Show us what it's all about here. What are we going?
Yeah, so we're going to begin the protest, the regime, and the truth, and we're going to get straight into it. The protests at the moment, we're going to start there and then work our way back and see what led to this. So first of all, this is Mahsa Amini. On the 16th of September 2022, a 22-year-old Iranian woman called Mahsa Amini died in a hospital in Tehran under suspicious circumstances. The Guidance Patrol, who are also known as the Religious Morality Police, which is a ridiculous name for them, but whatever, arrested her on the 13th for improperly wearing the hijab in accordance with government standards. And that means that she was either wearing it too loosely for their liking or had a single strand of hair showing. So she got arrested. Ridiculous. This happens over and over again, but this was the final straw for them. And then police, after transferring her to the hospital, said that she had a heart attack at the police station, collapsed, and then fell into a coma. This is her actual CT scans on the screen as well. If you have a look at that, that shows that that's not what happened at all. Multiple eyewitnesses, including women who were detained with her, said that she was severely beaten and sexually assaulted, and that she died as a result of police brutality. These assertions, in addition to leaked medical scans, led independent observers to believe that she had a cerebral hemorrhage or a stroke. So the clinic where she was treated released a statement on Instagram initially saying that she had died of... Oh, she was brain dead, basically, when she arrived. That's what they said. And they quickly deleted that post because there's a lot of going on within Iran. Right. Her brother noticed bruises on her head and legs. The women who were detained with her said she had been severely beaten for resisting the insults and curses of the officers who had arrested her. A number of doctors opined that Amni had suffered a brain injury based on the clinical symptoms, including bleeding from the ears and bruises under her eyes. This was also confirmed by the medical scans of her skull leaked by hacktivists, showing bone fractures, hemorrhage, and brain...
Okay, let me ask here. So, just real quick, Jim, who is the police force in Tehran? Is it like how LA or New York has NYPD, or is it more centralized from the federal level that they have people just...
I find this story, and I got to admit that I'm not current with that story. It's very shocking. And I mean, she looks like she was a beautiful young woman, and clearly she had become very westernized. She wanted to adopt attitudes that were more modern, and there can be police forces there. And I can't account for the layers, Dean, but I'm sure it would be analogous. And it's obvious already that she was severely beaten and possibly even raped. I think that's just horrific. And I would believe the Iranian authorities would want to get to the bottom of this. I'm eager to learn more. This is really
stunning. Me too, Jim. This is all news to me, but and that's the whole point is, Jim, there's a whole media blackout on this occurrence, but we're going to learn something. This isn't just a unique situation here, but I don't want to give it away. Continue, please, Lisa Duthie.
Yeah, so according to Iran International, the Iranian government was forging fake medical records for Amini, showing that she had a history of heart disease. On the 20th of September, Dr. Masoud Shirvani, a neurosurgeon, claimed on state-owned television that she had a brain tumor that was extracted in her childhood. So by the 21st of September, the hospital had released preliminary CT scans. Government supporters stated the CT scans showed psychological stress, which is an emotion and therefore cannot be seen on a bloody CT scan, caused by a previous brain operation. Critics stated that the scan showed physical beating and trauma. The Iranian government stated that she had a brain operation at the age of 5. However, her father has said that they are lying. She had never had any medical conditions and had never had any surgery. 2 classmates that were interviewed on the BBC said that they were not aware of her ever having been in hospital in her childhood. On the 29th of September, an audio file was released by a former commander of Iran's Revolutionary Guards Corps, which reports unnamed reliable sources saying that the reason for Amani's death was an injury to her skull and that injury was the result of a severe beating. The family lawyer told the internet online news website that respectable doctors believe that she was hit in custody. He also said that the family wants a fact-finding committee to probe her death and that the police footage filmed after her arrest should be handed over.
Okay, so
they're really trying to cover this up, but it's not the only thing to cover up, as we'll get into.
Right, there seems to be more now. Now, this is what happens too. If when the pendulum swings all the way from the loony leftists, the so-called leftists now, as we come back to kind of an even kill of people's state of minds, we have to do what the baby boomers failed to do, which is stop at that even median of the culture and the pop culture and the societal norms. Because what happens though, you go back to like the Stone Age then. Women become property. They become punching bags. Go ahead, Jim Fetzer.
It's already obvious they made a mistake. They beat her. It was wrong in the first place. It led to her death. The worst thing they can do is cover it up. The idea of having fake medical records, that's horrendous. If the government wants to maintain its authority, it's got to clean this up. It's got to come clean all the way from top to bottom.
Yes, it
it's
does.
Not the first time they've done this, though, Jim, and it certainly wouldn't be the last if they're allowed to continue. Which we'll find out.
Yes. Are we ready? Okay, so now we're going to get into the protest here, and just to let everyone know, this now is diving into the Arab Spring. That's something that Jim and I covered it relentlessly just 2 years ago. Continue, Lisa.
Yeah, so her death ignited protests by Iranians around the country denouncing her death and the regime that imposed it. It's a regime that's existed for over 40 years, where it's been dictating and oppressing all Iranian people, but particularly women and young girls. The protests have spread across the country, and the government there are fighting back with even more brutality and violence. There have been so far, since this happened in September, 40 confirmed deaths, including the deaths of innocent children, but it's suspected that many more have occurred, with some sources stating it goes into the hundreds, with estimates ranging from 400 up to over 900 dead so far, which is absolutely disgusting.
Okay, let's talk about this. So we're all on the same page. Is this woman dies, and they're mucking up the entire just methods of how she died. And it's eerily similar to 2009's death of a similar young, beautiful woman over there in Iran named Neda, which we're going to be getting to. But from experience of covering Iran, from the media perspective, they hate protests, and they especially hate when women protest. They hate it. It's just a stain on their palate. But we'll find out more here. Here we go.
Yeah, so we're going to move on now. Iran has strict censorship rules, so when the government realised that this information was on display to the world, they began the cover-up. They then hit back with even more violence, including rounding up anyone who was responsible for uploading any kind of footage and arresting them, or even worse, killing them on the spot. This has sparked more protests in other places, such as Ayatollah. For the first time in decades, many people, Iranians and non-Iranians, have united and come together to fight back against the regime. They have all taken to the streets, vocalizing their disgust and fears about what these dictators have been doing to innocent people. And good on them. I think this was just the final straw for them. Okay.
Yep. Yeah, go ahead, Lisa. Yeah. Sorry about that.
Right, so for decades, the people of Iran have been treated horrifically by this regime, in particular women and girls. The so-called morality police, which is a ridiculous name for them to have in the first place, have a well-known reputation for rounding up women and young girls, particularly on Friday evenings, accusing them of having a strand of hair loose, for example, could be something else, from their hijabs, and arresting them to then detain them and sexually assault and beat them over the weekend. And I've spoken to people who have got contacts in Iran. This has been going on, and it's quite a widespread problem that doesn't get talked about.
Yeah, yes, it is. So, look at how Lisa's dressed right now. If she was right in the capital of Iran, she would be prime target. I mean, she's breaking the law right now, according to their rule
also,
of law.
I'd like to point out as well.
Yes, go ahead, Jamie.
Just because you don't always see the beatings and the things going on, it's happening. They've got high censorship, so it happens behind the scenes, off the cameras and things like that. So it does happen, yeah. For those who think that you instant it, so it hasn't happened.
It does. It does.
I'd just like to quickly address a comment on Facebook saying that we're making way too many assumptions. We've actually spoke to people who are on the ground in Iran and are there and have lived through this, so we're not making any assumptions. We spoke to the people that are living through it.
Yeah, well, who's saying that? Well, you're jumping ahead of the story. They are. You have to let it play out. You know, they want to like, what's the ending of the book or the movie? You have to wait a little bit. But let's continue, and we don't pay attention to them because Lisa has firsthand information, which you're going to find out. So let's continue here on the very bad protest and how now the women are starting to gather together and realize they're being targeted. This is getting very noticeable.
Yeah, so we're going to move on. Right, so these women, although terrified, are showing astonishing bravery considering the regime that they live under. Many have been killed already, and yet they still stand strong. Many Iranian men have joined the process to fight alongside their wives, mothers, and daughters, but it's these brave women who have the most to lose by doing this. But they also have the most to gain, freedom from tyranny. They have lived their entire lives in fear, oppressed, beaten, sexually assaulted, watched friends and family members be murdered by the so-called authorities, and now they are finally saying no more. They are burning their hijabs, shaving their heads, and standing up for their freedom. Because that was the final straw. I mean, one of many women that have been found dead under these circumstances in Iran, but they couldn't take any more.
Now, I want to go to Jim because we have a irate viewer, which is good because I'm irate too, so we can both be irate. And she said first off, but we understand, Jim, is where I'm getting at. I'm going to ask you is sure there's probably Central Intelligence agents involved in stirring up crowds to then get a disenfranchised minority wound up. That's just a given. But you can't disregard the fact that this is happening to women beyond the focal point of characters here. But Jim Fetzer, what say you?
Well, I'm very moved by the report Lisa's making. It all sounds totally authentic to me, unlike what we had in the United States. I was thinking of a similar event, namely the death of George Floyd, but where I've done an investigation there, and it turns out that was a staged, phony event that was deliberately contrived to set off protests that were planned in advance. This looks organic, spontaneous, and I got to say, I'm in awe and admiration of the women and their husbands and fathers and brothers who are standing up with them to overthrow this form of oppression. It is something I have not appreciated in the past. So I'm learning a great deal here from what Lisa is reporting.
Yes.
And
Can I comment on a comment in the chat before we continue?
Yeah, go for it, Lisa, because Jim is
right. Teresa Robin, you've wrote, we're guessing you're not interested in understanding this one, sensationalizing it for views rather than showing the video of the poor woman in the police station and what happened. Peace out, you're no better than the American media. Now, we've got confirmed sources on the ground. We know this happened. We know what's been happening for many years. If you don't want to admit that's what's happening, that's not on us. Just report.
Do we have an idea of what she thinks was the alternative version?
Well, no. Teresa doesn't want to give an alternative, Jim. She just wants to be. She wants to be seen and heard.
That's
and then she wants to tell me to peace out.
She said earlier there was no evidence shown of her beating. I said no, it happened behind the scenes because we know it happened because we've got someone there.
Just because the Iranian government has put the shutters down, they're sanctioning the internet, they're stopping this from getting out, doesn't mean that it didn't happen.
Yeah, and furthermore, Teresa, this is like new for me. I mean, you're just making blatant statements. I mean, that's like me saying that you're not a real person. You're probably just a Iranian bot trying to throw me off.
Probably.
So peace out to you. I don't want your peace out.
Until you actually hear the whole story and see how it all comes together.
Yeah.
Don't sit there and criticize because
let's hear more. But I would be curious as to what.
Yeah, let's continue.
The alternative explanation. Yeah, Lisa, please proceed.
Yeah, continue, Lisa, before Miss I have ants in my pants tells us to peace out.
Since the death at our hands of the morality police, many others have sadly lost their lives fighting for their freedoms. These men, women, and even children were heroes. Their bravery in standing up against a barbaric regime with no weapons, but their voices and their bare hands against automatic weapons and the potential of death is both tragic and inspiring. The morality police started patrolling the streets of Iran in 2006, and it did not take them long to begin to abuse their power. They arrest offenders, whom are mainly female, force them to strip naked, beat them, then sexually assault them. And as if those things alone were not hard enough to stomach, these monsters will go as far as cutting off limbs and executing offenders. And by offenders, this could mean that your hijab was deemed to be too loose.
Wow. So, yeah, that's where they take you out, because they do something similar. This is like Sharia law that the Taliban practice.
That's what I was going to say. The Taliban was doing it before, the same sort of practice where they go in the marketplace and, get money off of these people and check that they're, And...
It's done under the guise of being religion, but there's nothing remotely religious about any of this.
Here's the weird thing, too, is Iran is not strictly Muslim. There's so many different sectors. There's Christians that live there. It was very secular. I mean, I don't know about now. Obviously, it's a little different with the morality police, or whoever they are, the moral police. But let's continue, shall we?
Yeah, so the excuse for getting the women to strip, this is ridiculous, is basically a purifying process is what they call it, where once the women or children are naked, these enforcers will beat and torture their captives, verbally abuse them. Then they will sacrifice an animal and douse the offender in the blood to purify their body from the alleged crimes that they have committed, which is horrific enough. However, they then take this opportunity to take turns in sexually assaulting them. And if anybody sitting there thinks that these women are out on the streets protesting, putting their lives in danger, they've got no weapons, all they've got is their voices, they're doing this for nothing, for something that didn't happen.
A little bit of makeup or something.
Then you're crazy. If it's just about them wanting to put a little bit of makeup on, you're crazy.
I think that's an important point, Lisa, that we wouldn't expect this kind of protest on the scale if there were not a sincere, genuine, widely held belief that this event had taken place roughly along the lines you described, whether or not it's correct in every detail. So I'm really floored to learn these developments.
I mean, how dare we talk about the protests? We became sensationalizing just protesters. All right.
Well, sometimes the truth is sensational. It's bloody scary, but it needs to be told.
Mind you, I'm very pro-Iran. I've had a long history. I've probably done 100 interviews on Iranian television, and I've been very impressed. The Iranians I've met and known were very substantial people who wouldn't stand for this for a minute. So there must be a real schism in the structure of the authorities, where there are older hardliners who believe in the traditional practices, who are resisting the westernization that's inevitable in Iran, with these young people who are learning more and more about Western practices and the freedom that women enjoy by and large in other nations.
Good point, Jim, because this could be the whole new millennial class, just like the new cops we have in the like the new cops we have in the United States, the cops 2.0. They're all the deferred cops that when Obama federalized the American police precincts around the country and they took the federal money, well, they also had to take the directives from the DOJ, I believe, to then only hire deferred cops, deferred soldiers that did the brutalizing in the wars. So we could be seeing that. You know what I'm saying? It's very complicated. It's not a very black and white thing, but these
sort of measures and like these morality police that just existed since 2006, they're all introduced over time, and it sort of sneaks up on them, and before you know it, you're living in a completely oppressed society, and the Iranian people are brilliant. It's just like blaming the ordinary Chinese people for what the CCP are doing. It's the regime that they're living under that is
Well,
a
I
problem.
was just going to say that, Lisa. Very good point, because this is exactly what China has throughout their country. They have their morality police. If you're caught worshiping or doing some kind of spirituality or church event, they come over and then they get a crane and knock down your house, and to teach you a lesson or boil you alive or something crazy like that. So that's very important. There's a huge China influence in Iran, which we're going to get to, because there is a proxy war between Israel and China, and Iran's being used as one of the pawns. So let's continue, Lisa, please.
Yeah, so basically, just to finish this slide, they're assaulted so much that many of them will die for their injuries, and that's if they've not been purposely killed before. It's tragic. It's absolutely tragic, and it shouldn't be happening anywhere in the world. It's absolutely disgusting. I think I just went. I've lost my slide now. Wait a minute. He's on mute.
Yeah.
Jalumbo, I'm going to go to you because while Lisa finds that, what has before we get started here, what is the posturing of the UK when it comes to Iran? Are they considered a ally or a adversary to the UK?
I don't really know the answer to that, to be honest. I don't really know. I think that, again, there's mixed feelings about. I think that's the thing with all these countries at the moment, and we're just being told to hate Russia at the moment. So I'm not actually sure.
Yeah.
I couldn't honestly answer that, Dean.
Okay, yeah, that's a good point. How are we supposed to get mad at Iran when we're supposed to be mad at Russia right now? There's just only so much energy. All right, let's go.
So distracting, isn't it? So from going right up to the latest what's going on today, members of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guards allegedly opened fire on schoolgirls chanting anti-regime slogans on Wednesday. This is coming out of Fox News today. The IRGC is Iran's most brutal weapon against protesters outraged at the death of 22-year-old Mahsa Amini at the hands of the country's morality police. Unrest has been most prevalent in the Kurdish regions of Iran, and the regime is now preparing for a brutal crackdown on Sanadaj, the region's capital. Regime enforcers have killed hundreds of demonstrators across the country since Amini's death last month. The Hengo Organization for Human Rights says that the IRGC troops killed 5 and wounded 400 with machine gun fire and other violence throughout the northern Kurdish region this week. And I sent you 2 videos on Twitter, Dean, and they're the ones that need to be played at the moment. You want to just show them when you're ready? You're on mute.
I know. I'm going to play the. I want to play the one I have in the brand right here, and I'm going to cue the other ones up. But to Lisa's point, look at this next video, which will illustrate the urgency of this entire crisis, which is engulfing the Iranian women who are having to fend for themselves. I can't imagine. And similar things like these are also happening in India too. Let's not forget the gang raping just trend that seems to be continuing over there in that country. Here is the Iranian and the plight of the Iranian women. Check this out.
Yeah, so that's just one of many. There's a couple of other videos. One of them is very, very short, but
one of them. I'm going to play these next videos here. This is really short. Then we're going to get Jim and Jalumbo's take on it. Here is the first one in continuation of the theme of what we just witnessed there. This is a very quick little clip of what they're allowing to happen to women. They're just leaving them for dead. Here's a video of that evidence.
سنندجی کیو کشتن سنندجی کیو کشتن.
Okay, so
that's
the first
actually
one.
A young man that was protesting alongside them that's just been left dead in the streets because he dared to protest against it.
Yeah, he was identified as 33-year-old Muhammad Amini from Sanadaji, local activist of the Kurdistan province. Yeah, because there's the Kurds and then there's the Wahhabist Muslims that are like the Sharia law type. Perfect example was John Brennan, former head of the CIA and the creator of Barack Obama. He's a Wahhabist Muslim, everybody. This is how they rule the land. This is a different sector of Islam. It's equivalent of maybe people that are just evangelical, regular, whatever Christian people do the Sundays compared to the ones that have the snakes in the air. You know, those real radical people. Okay, here's the next one here. This one we're about to see is the Islamic Republic of Iran. You're going to see they're on the verge of committing more slaughter. This is from the 10th of October. This is a bird's eye view of the whole thing as the revolution is now it's sparking across the world. Here it is. Check this out.
هفته رو 401 کمربنی آخر
So that's what's happening right now in Iran. Jim Fetzer, I'm going to go to you because you've been there. This is kind of eye-opening because not a lot of Western media, if any, are covering the true nature and brutality of what seems to be taking place in Iran, are they?
Well, I have some contacts, and I will see what I can do to confirm what you're reporting here. Some of that last footage looked to me like it might even be fireworks as opposed to gunshots. I didn't hear any ricochets or the sounds of bullets. So I'm not quite convinced that actually meant people were being shot at or shot and killed. But the other is profoundly disturbing, and I find it very unsettling and I'm very unhappy to hear these reports.
Yes, indeed. Jalumbo, Jamie, do you want to comment on that? Because, you know, in the world affairs right now, where virtually every country around the world right now is on the brink of a massive revolution, could this spark a domino effect of just a kinetic energy and tsunami wave of revolution that a lot of people...
I think it possibly could because, like you say, it's unrest everywhere. And I think all countries all around the globe could end up being in similar sorts of situations. We've got like the brutality and unfairness to women, and another country is something else, and so on and so forth. We can look at some of the things what's going on in America right now, and at some point something's going to give. You see.
Yeah.
So something's going to give. All right, Lisa, shall we continue into this journey into the mysteries of Iran?
Yeah, just really quickly before we move on to the next part, I saw this meme on an Iranian I know is feed, and it was quite apt, really. So yeah. We are all disappointed and angry at Kamala Harris, Michelle Obama, Oprah Winfrey, etc. There are more for pretending to be women's rights advocates while completely ignoring the biggest feminist movement in history. And that person was disappointed at themselves for respecting them. Personally, I've never respected them, but they do claim to be advocates for women's rights, and this is going on and been going on since mid-September, and not a peep out of these people.
No. Kamala Harris is complete filth, and Oprah and all these people. They're women only in name only. That's what I think it is, Lisa. But yeah, they're terrible. And good on Tulsi Gabbard for getting away from that witchy woman and what she's saying about it.
Trust her, but yeah.
Well, Lisa, I have that's for
Yeah.
I think she's on the money here.
Yeah, we're now going to go into the Iranian Revolution and the Islamic Republic and look at the history of that and see how it all ties together. So,
Okay. Here it is.
Yeah.
1979.
So, the Revolution of 1979. The Iranian Revolution, also known as the Islamic Revolution, was a revolution that transformed Iran from an absolute monarchy under Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi to an Islamic Republic under Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, one of the leaders of the revolution and founder of the Islamic Republic, who came to power in December 3rd to be exact, 1979. The first major demonstrations began in January 1978 and continued over the course of the next 2 years until the Ayatollah was declared supreme leader in December 1979. In January, the Shah, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, left the country in exile after strikes and demonstrations paralysed the country. It was shortly thereafter that the Ayatollah returned to Tehran. The final collapse of the Pahlavi dynasty occurred following a declaration of neutrality by the Iranian military on February 11th of that year. Iran officially became an Islamic Republic on April the 1st, 1979, after the Iranian people overwhelmingly approved a national referendum to make it so. Although it has been widely speculated that this was fixed. Depends where you look, to be honest. This was 1979. Obviously, there's no evidence either way, but we've seen stranger things happen in our country, so who knows?
Yeah, who knows? So, okay, let's go back to this. Jim, I want to get your take on this, because let's try to maybe remind people what the country over here was like going into 1979. You had Carter, who was up for re-election, versus Reagan and Bush. Kind of maybe catch us up to speed for maybe people who don't know, weren't around, or forgot about it, if you could.
Well, there's several issues here, Dean, that require contemplation, to wit that when the Iranian people regained control of their government in 1979, it was in response to a coup that had been engineered by the CIA in 1953.
Yeah.
Orchestrated by Kermit Roosevelt, who was a cousin of Theodore Roosevelt. It was done because the Iranians were nationalizing the oil industry. They had a wonderful prime minister, Mossadegh, who was overthrown by this CIA UK really oil industry inspired coup. So
BP, yeah.
That's on the next slides, Jim.
Okay, well, I'm just it's so indispensable to understand, because Americans think Iran struck the first blow in 79 when they seized the American embassy, but it was the United States that intervened over 25 years earlier that struck the first blow.
Exactly. And so after this next segment, Lisa, I want to go back to this and add context to it all, so people understand the hostage situation, how long that took, where Jimmy Carter was, and the ringleader of it all, Bush. So we're going to come back to that, but let's continue, Lisa, on this weird trip we're going down right now.
Yeah. Oh, I pressed the wrong button.
Hi, that's me.
But sorry about that.
Yep.
Yeah. So the ideology of the revolutionary government was populist, nationalist, and most of all, Shia Islamic. Its unique constitution is based on the concept of velati. I don't know how to say that, so you can read it on the screen. I'm probably going to butcher it if I try it. The idea of advanced by Khomeini that Muslims, in fact everyone, requires guardianship in the form of ruler supervision by the leading Islamic jurist or jurists. Khomeini served as a ruling jurist or supreme leader until his death in 1989. Iran's rapidly modernizing capitalist economy was replaced by populist and Islamic economic and cultural policies. Much industry was nationalized, laws and schools were Islamicized, and Western influences were banned. So this is when we go back to what Jim was just saying. So if you go back to 1953, the CIA and MI6, the usual suspects, organized a coup in Iran known as Operation Ajax and Operation Boot, respectively. The coup was a black propaganda campaign designed to turn the population against Prime Minister Mossadegh, basically forced Mossadegh from office. He was subsequently arrested and tried for treason and found guilty, and that's him in the picture there. His sentence was reduced to house arrest on his family estate, while his foreign minister Hossein Fatimi was executed. Zahedi succeeded him as prime minister and suppressed opposition to the Shah, specifically the National Front and Communist Tedu Party. And then we get into the Iran-Contra affair after this. So do you want to just comment on that before we move on?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Lisa. Okay, let's get into this now, Jim. Now, it's come to my attention. I'm going to set it up for you, Jim, to spike it at your leisure. Going into the 1980s now, you have Jimmy Carter, who was a peanut farmer and who was the successor of the Nixon resignation, and then going into Ford, who was just there as a just seat filler. And really, Jimmy Carter didn't want to go to war. Now, here's how it really went down from our understanding, is that in the embassy, when the revolution happened in 1979, they were going to overthrow the embassy, the American embassy. You might have seen the movie with Ben Affleck. At least I can't think of the name right now, but they tried to, like that one wonderful viewer who left, they tried to sensationalize it, saying that you had this so-called movie director guy, who was a CIA guy, that went in there and convinced the Iranian Guard that they were going to film a new movie, and in doing so, they freed the hostages. However, and I'm going to get Jim's take on this now, it's come to fruition now, and no longer wives' tale, that it was Bush Sr., head of the CIA, now going into the 1980s in the Bush-Reagan, where he actually was running the country after he had Reagan shot, that he was telling Khomeini to withhold the hostages, do not let them free, to sink Carter in his polls, to then get the Bush-Reagan administration in. And, so Reagan wins. He takes office January 21st, 1981. Boom, hostages are let go after, 500 days. So that's kind of how it was said. And then we get into Iran-Contra. But you want to take it from there, Jim, on that analysis of it, and then maybe kind of key people in, too, of not just that, but what Iran-Contra was explained to us. And then I have a little video on that. Go ahead, Jim.
Well, it was really, I think, William Casey, who was Ronald Reagan's campaign manager, was apprehensive that if the Iranians released the hostages before the election, that the surge of enthusiasm over their release would lead to a Carter victory over Reagan. So in order to forestall that, he entered into secret agreements with the Iranians to provide them with weapons, where they were going to concurrently get money for the weapons they would use to fund the Contras in Nicaragua, which Congress had expressly forbid being financed by the American government, where Ollie North played the key role in orchestrating all these.
Oh, he sure did. This guy here. And you remember, Jim, when he was always testifying, he had all his garb on with all his pins and needles on his little uniform to really present himself as the patriot type. Do you remember that? Here's a little tape. Yeah, I'm sorry. Continue, Jim.
No, I was just going to say, ironically, in 2006, just before Alex Jones had his 9/11 conference where he'd invited me to be the keynote speaker, I was on Hannity and Combs, and Hannity was not present. They substituted Ollie North. And I called my wife and said, honey, this is just going to be a conversation between two former Marine Corps officers. And she said, don't kid yourself. They're going to try to kill you. And of course, she was right. They brought in had them bring in a TV screen so I'd know how they were going to pitch it. And while they told me they wanted to learn what we discovered about 9/11, they were going to actually target me for teaching 9/11, but they didn't know enough about what I was doing in class, and I was able to seize control of the program.
Good on
you,
Jim.
Available online.
Good on you, Lisa. Here's a 30-second clip, I believe, of the entire Iran-Contra explanation that Jim and I are attempting to articulate to.
I have got a few slides going over for people that don't understand the history.
Okay, just here's a 60-second clip, and then we're going to go over the slides, and then we'll weave and wove ourselves through it. Here it is. In addition to
the Iran-Contra affair, 1979, Nicaraguan communist-backed group known as the Sandinistas have taken power. During this time, America was still locked in a Cold War with the Soviet Union. President Ronald Reagan takes a hard stance against the threat of communism around the world. He focuses on a group of rebels in Nicaragua called Contras, wanting to give them military aid for their fight against the communist Sandinistas. In 1982, the Boland Amendment was passed, preventing the United States from sending any aid to any group attempting to overthrow the Sandinistas. This included the Contras. President Reagan then went to his national security advisor, Robert McFarlane, to look for another possible way to back the Contras. Jump to 1985, an opportunity opens up in Iran when terrorist group Hezbollah takes 7 American hostages in Lebanon. Reagan, wanting to do everything he can to save the hostages, creates a deal with Iran involving the United States giving armaments to Israel after Israel had given their weapons to Iran. The deal goes through as Iran is stuck in the middle of a war with Iraq. However, a significant portion of the funds are redirected to the Contras by Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North. A year later, in 1986, a Lebanese newspaper reports on the arms deal, which starts a chain of investigations resulting in the uncovering of the Iran-Contra affair.
Okay, there it is.
That was very good, Dean. And I was merging the two different events. Casey was instrumental in persuading the Iranians not to release the hostages prior to the election to ensure that Reagan would prevail over Jimmy Carter. And then subsequently, in order to get money to fund the Contras, Ollie negotiated a weapons for money deal that was then provided to do the covert funding, which Congress had declared not to be legal. So it's
incredible.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get into it, Lisa, because it's a huge story, and Jim, I don't even know if anyone has ever faced consequences for the Iran-Contra, but what we wound up figuring out is that Manuel Noriega was a CIA asset. Ho Chi Minh was a CIA asset. Is it out of this world to say that the Khomeini or maybe people around him were also CIA assets of the Bush realm of the Central Intelligence? Because Bush is the key person of all this wickedness. I mean, he had John Lennon killed right before they went into office with Hinckley and all those people, Chapman. Continue, Lisa.
Well, I buy Noriega, of course. I doubt Ho would be more likely to be playing the West, you know. All he can. Yeah. Ironically, we've discovered in relation to the story of Lee Oswald going to Mexico City to obtain a visa to travel to Cuba to escape to Russia because he was supposed to be a communist when he actually was a covert agent for the U.S., even an FBI informant. That the whole thing was a subterfuge, and 3 presidents of Mexico were CIA assets, Dean. So what you're saying is not out of the question. It's
Thank you. It's hard to stomach, though. Hard to stomach, yes.
The Vietnamese were so fiercely nationalistic, I find that highly unlikely. Iranians are, by and large, I'm very distraught about this story now, what's going on tough. Here, these young women being killed. But it's clearly, assuming we have all the facts straight, it's clearly a cultural issue of not wanting women to become more independent, self-assertive, and violate the customs of the past. Old habits die hard, but it's brutal. And if they're gang raping these young women and murdering them and all that. Obviously, that's repulsive and it has to be cleaned up. But I will see what I can do to find out what's going on here and what the government's doing about it, because this is horrific. Very bad. Very bad.
Okay, Lisa, you have the floor.
Yeah, we're just going to get, like, for anybody that doesn't know, because this happened in the 80s, some people might not be aware of the Contra thing, so I've got a couple of slides that go over maybe some of the things that Dean and Jim have just said, so we'll skip through them really quickly just to give you an outline of what this was, because it's all relevant when we get into the next part, which has got to do with the oil and the gas.
Yeah.
So the Iran-Contra affair, often referred to the Iran-Contra scandal, the McFarlane affair in Iran, or simply Iran-Contra, was a political scandal in the United States that occurred during the second term of the Reagan administration. I believe Bush was his vice president at the time. I might be mistaken on that.
No, you're spot on. He was.
Between 1981 and 1986, senior administration officials secretly facilitated the sale of arms to Iran, which was the subject of an arms embargo. The administration hoped to use the proceeds of the arms sales to fund the Contras, a right-wing rebel group in Nicaragua. Under the Boland Amendment, further funding of the Contras by the government had been prohibited by Congress. So, meanwhile, in the Middle East, where US relations with many nations were strained, I need to get that up on my screen, to the breaking point, two regional powers, Iraq and Iran, were engaged in a bloody conflict. At the same time, Iranian-backed terrorists in Hezbollah were holding hostage 7 Americans. Oh, yeah, I've got the wrong...
Oh, there's the man right there, Oliver North.
Reagan delivered another ultimatum to his advisors: find a way to bring the hostages home. In 1985, McFarlane sought to do just that. He told Reagan that Iran had approached the United States about purchasing weapons for its war against the neighbouring Iraq. There was, however, a US trade embargo with Iran at the time, dating back to the country's revolution and the subsequent overthrow of Shah Pahlavi of Iran, in which 52 American hostages were held for 444 days in a diplomatic standoff known as the Iran hostage crisis. And then we get into Oliver North. So, Lebanese newspaper Al Shira first reported the arms deal between the United States and Iran in 1986, well into Reagan's second term. By that time, 1,500 American missiles had been sold to Iran for $30 million. 3 of the 7 hostages in Lebanon were also released, although the Iran-backed terrorist group later took 3 more Americans hostage. Reagan initially denied that he had negotiated with Iran or the terrorists, only to retract that statement a week later. Meanwhile, Attorney General Edwin Meese launched an investigation into the weapons deal and found that some 18 million of the 30 million Iran had paid for the weapons was unaccounted for. It was then that Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North of the National Security Council came forward to acknowledge that he had diverted the missing funds to the Contras in Nicaragua, who used them to acquire weapons. North said,
something.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I want
to go for it. With the full knowledge of the National Security Advisor, Admiral John Poindexter, he assumed Reagan was also aware of his efforts.
Okay, so here it is. Okay, Oliver North, and you want to talk about derelict of duty, a man who could lie through his teeth and your teeth combined. Here's a little sample of the Mr. G.I. Joe here, Mr. All-American, of what life was like for him, and that just infamous testimony he made in 1986. Reagan had no idea. Bush was running it. Oliver North was running it. Who was the other guy, the third in charge, Tip, Speaker of the House? So here's Oliver North, just to wet your whistle.
Appreciate you coming here. And one of the purposes also is to make this forum available to you to say whatever you want to say at this point.
Mr. Chairman, we appreciate the opening remarks of the chairman and the other congressmen. It should come as no surprise that responsible counsel will advise the colonel to assert his constitutional right not to testify. That is what we have done, and that is what we will continue to do. In that regard, the Colonel has a brief statement to make to the committee. We appreciate the opportunity to do so.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. Lieutenant Colonel North.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, and thank you, Mr. Solomon. I am anxious, as I know that you are, to put this matter behind us and to facilitate the important business of protecting the national security interests of the United States. I share your desire to put this issue to rest quickly and fully. And to further that end, I want to be able to provide a full exposition of the facts as I know them on this matter.
Okay, so there you have it. Jim, what was the consensus of Americans, just the average Americans in 1986 as this was transpiring into just what the hell is this going on? Because nobody saw this coming from a mile away. Because it was the first introduction of a kind of a shadowy government unfolding, was it not?
Well, it was a bona fide scandal. I mean, the fact that Reagan reversed himself in a week, he did not, I think, literally know what was going on. So he was sincere in both instances. He would have been informed by Poindexter after he made his first remark that it was in error, and therefore he corrected himself. But this kind of covert action, actually, it's tame by comparison to what goes on in more recent administration, Dean. I think the corruption of the United States and its action behind the scene, interfering and sabotaging other nations in their conduct of their sovereign governmental affairs has been monstrous in the United States.
Absolutely, Jim. I mean, they're interfering. They're interfering in domestic affairs. You know what this military-industrial complex has done overseas has been brought home. It was almost the technique they were trying to format overseas to perfect. They wanted to do just that before they brought it back here and used it against us. Now, Oliver North pled the fifth. He didn't, this guy was the one giving the guns to Iran, allegedly for the hostages, and then paying the Contras. Now, why the Contras, everybody?
Giving missiles.
Why were they paying the Contras? Because you have to remember, too, Bush now, former head of the CIA, think about that, CIA in current at that time. They were starting to bring in crack cocaine into the United States to perpetuate the war on drugs started by Richard Nixon in 1972. They put the crack cocaine into the black neighborhoods, build up the prison system, invest in the private prisons that they started rolling out in the late 80s, early 90s onward. This was the rhyme to the reason, if you will. This was it. Bush Sr. by far has got to be the most evil American president, and I say that loosely, that this country's ever seen, because he was so stealth. That's how effective he was. Go ahead, Lisa.
Yeah, so this led to the Tower Commission. So the American press hounded Reagan over the matter for the rest of his presidency. The Tower Commission, led by Texas Senator John Tower, which the president himself appointed, investigated the administration's involvement and concluded that Reagan's lack of oversight enabled those working under him to divert the funds to the Contras. During a subsequent congressional investigation in 1987, protagonists in the scandal, including Reagan, testified before the commission in hearings that were televised nationally. Later, independent counsel Lawrence Walsh launched an 8-year investigation into what had then become known as the Iran-Contra affair. In all, 14 people were charged, including North, Poindexter, and McFarlane. Reagan himself was never charged, and in 1992, George H.W. Bush, Reagan's vice president, who was elected president in 1988, preemptively pardoned Weinberger. McFarlane was charged with 4 counts of withholding information from Congress, a misdemeanor. He was sentenced to 2 years probation and $20,000 in fines. North was charged with 12 counts relating to conspiracy and making false statements. Although he was convicted in his initial trial, the case was dismissed on appeal due to a technicality. And North has since worked as a conservative author, critic, television host, and head of the NRA. Poindexter was initially indicted on 7 felonies and ultimately tried on 5. He was found guilty on 4 of the charges and sentenced to 2 years in prison, although his convictions were later vacated. In addition, 4 CIA officers and 5 government contractors were also prosecuted, although all found guilty of charges ranging from conspiracy to perjury to fraud. Only one, private constructor Thomas Kleins, ultimately served time in prison. This is very telling, isn't it?
So yeah. Anyways, we have a hard break coming up, but Jim, how telling is this? That when you have the fox who's guarding the hen house, Bush Senior, he gets back into the White House. Some say, would say he never left. He was running the entire show, the entire decade. That they pardon the people that do the dirty deeds, which is exactly what has been said about Barack Obama. About he literally gave everyone immunity that was in his staff, everyone that did all his dirty deeds, because now it's been happening since the beginning of time, it seems, which makes it hard to really conduct a investigation retrospectively, isn't it?
Well, I agree with you about George H.W. Bush. He was oversaw the Bay of Pigs fiasco. He was on the ground in Dallas supervising, along with Edward Lansdale, the assassination of JFK. Reagan was shot to convey the message, let George do it. And pretty much thereafter, he was running the government. Barack Obama has been so complicit in so many corrupt acts, including dismissing hundreds of generals and admirals because they felt their dedication was to the Constitution and not to Barack Obama. Let me add, when it says Reagan's lack of oversight, what that really means, he delegated responsibility or authority. Yeah. He delegated the authority to conduct certain operations, but you always, as president, have the ultimate responsibility, which he assumed. I think he was a good man, but others took advantage of his.
Well, yes, absolutely, Jim. I mean, when they had Hinckley shoot Reagan, who was sent there by the Bush family, it was to send a message to Reagan, you're not really running this. But it's very telling that when he was shot, that they flew him to, I believe it was somewhere in Nebraska or somewhere in the middle of the country. It just so happened to be the head doctor who operated on Reagan was one of the lead doctors in the MKUltra experience from decades prior. What does that tell you? Then he has Alzheimer's. So it's just very telling, and just how evil George Bush Sr. was. And let's not even forget Franklin's scandal and what he did with Dick Cheney to everybody there. But Oliver North, I don't know how this guy sleeps at night, because in my closing thought is, having been to Central America and seen what the drug war has done and the CIA has done throughout all of Central America, one of the most beautiful regions in the world, it's all decimated. I mean, people live under little bamboo shoots still. It's decimated.
And Biden operating in complicity with Obama is turning the United States into a Venezuela itself. We're being decayed by this massive influx of migrants. We're having our economy destroyed. The whole green agenda is just a cover to take out gas and energy, without which we cannot be mobilized as a nation. They've weakened the military with a vax and all these mandates. It's disgusting what's going on right among us today, for which both George H.W. Bush and Barack Obama, I dare say, bear a major responsibility.
Oh, gosh. We have one more slide left, and Jim, you're so on the money. And let's not forget, too, in 1986, the decline in the Reagan state of mind, that's when he did the big amnesty. And the first real big amnesty this country's ever seen, he just let them all come in, starting in 1986. So that really shows us, Jim, looking back at it, the second, I guess the latter years of the Reagan administration and his second term, he was really kind of out of it. I mean, he had no clue. If you look at those old footage of the Iran Contra, I mean, Reagan talking about, he was news to him. So anyways, we have one more slide, Lisa. Why don't we go to that? Here it is. Okay, Lisa, you have.
Yeah, I was on mute. Yeah. Despite the fact that Reagan had promised voters he would never negotiate with terrorists, which he or his underlings did while brokering the weapons sales with Iran, the two-term occupant of the White House left office as a popular president. In interviews years later, Walsh, the special counsel tasked with investigating the Iran-Contra scandal, said that Reagan's instinct for the country's good were right, and implied that the president may have had difficulty remembering specifics of the scandal due to his failing health. Reagan himself acknowledged that selling arms to Iran was a mistake during his testimony before Congress. However, his legacy, at least among his supporters, remained intact, and the Iran-Contra affair has been relegated to an often overlooked chapter in US history. But a lot of that was going on with Bush behind the scenes. So.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. But
When we, I think we're going to
We're gonna have a quick break. Okay.
When we get back, we're going to look into the oil and the gas and the money trail and see what's really going
I
on.
think
And why this
Lisa
is all...
did a commendable job of recounting the history here, Dean. I'm very favorably impressed.
Yes, she is.
Very much.
And this is, this is the stuff they don't teach us in high school in the United States. You don't learn about Iran-Contra. You don't learn about modern history, post-Vietnam War. You really, they just want to tell you about medieval times and just everything in between. They just seem to forget. So anyways, we're going to take a quick break. We're so blessed to have the great Jim Fetzer here with Lisa Duthie, who's doing just an impeccable job, as we're now doing a crescendo where we're going to wind up where we started. And I'm going to really share with you what this all means towards the end, as the alliances of the world order here has now seemingly changed right before our eyes. So anyways, everybody, just hold your seats here. We're going to be right back after these messages with Jim, Lisa, and myself, and getting into the mysteries, the hidden mysteries of Iran. You don't want to miss the second half here. So stand by, if you would. Stand by.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Delicious things to eat.
The popcorn can't be beat. The sparkling drinks are just dandy. The chocolate bars and the candy. So let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Oh, it's that time of the year. Oh, it's Real Deal Media's fall collection. It's embarking on the season. Lisa Duthie's collection. Dean Ryan's collection for Shoptober. Yes, Shoptober. The t-shirt is now available here in the store. The Shoptober candle to keep you company when it's darkest night with the Real Deal Media candle. But urban chimes is here. Yes, don't take the brick, Bill Gates. Your soul, your twat spotting. Everything is available on Putin. Everything is available on Real Deal Media's bodies. And yes, faces that we recognize. They know style. They know Shoptober like the Metsar. Yes, Real Deal Media, the bipolar case, and the new fall collection. And Real Deal Media's fall collection is ready. Please you. It's ready to please you. Oh, yes, Shoptober. It's ready to please you here. And the fall collection is here. In this seasonal time of this festive time of year, this festive vacation. Pleasure is mine. Go to RealDealMedia.tv for the store. Get your fall collection groove on. And use promo code THEFALL to get additional savings. Oh my. Okay, welcome back to the lounge, everybody. Yes, this is a historic episode tonight, The Mysteries of Iran. That is correct. I am your lounge master, Dean Ryan, and you just happen to be one of the first class of people to have witnessed the new fall collection. I don't know if you've noticed, but Jim Fetzer has his own new collection out. It's called the Fetzer Collection. He is a polo shirt expertise. In fact, Mr. Blackwell, the former head of the styling department over there in the newspapers, used to consult with Jim first before he put out his report. Isn't that correct, Jim? That's true.
Whatever you say, Dino. I can't wait to see what you have in mind.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, he's been working out, ladies. Yes. How many lunches are you doing every night before bed? Lots going on there. Yes, indeed. What's going on? You can also get, if you want to, all proceeds, by the way, for all your polo shirts you get for your men, or you can be a woman too and wear polo shirts, right, Jim? Women wear polo shirts.
Absolutely.
That's right.
Probably wear them better.
Yes, they do. All proceeds go to Jim Fetzer for your efforts in helping fuel this operation and also keeping a great legend like Jim in our lexicon. You can also get the Standing on the Edge. You can also have me in the morning with your coffee, World at War, with my signature there. And then if you're into Halloween, we have our Shocktober candles. Jim loves candles too. I'll make him a candle with his face on it as well. So all you got to do is just go to realdealmedia.tv/store and then use promo code THEFALL for additional savings. Okay, Jim, since you're here too. All right. I'm going to bring Lisa Duthie back and just give her a virtual round of applause, everyone. Lisa has done a fine job. I've been wanting to cover this Iran-Contra situation for the longest time, and it's about time someone does relook at modern history. But so, Lisa, where are we now? Up to this point, we started with what's happening right now in Iran, which is truly egregious, which we'll go over again. Going all the way back to 1953, the installment of the Shah by the Central Intelligence, all the way to 79. Jim, am I missing a article of?
I just wanted to add that during the break, Dean, I've already Skyped a friend of mine in the Iranian government about what's going on here, the events you've been describing, to get some verification or what he has to say about it. So I will pursue this.
Absolutely, Jim, and yeah, please let us know. We'll do a follow-up story, Lisa. But so, am I on part? Okay, so that's where we are now.
We started off in the present day. We went back and looked at everything leading up to it, going back to 1953 all the way through 1979. And we're now going to tie it all together by looking at the oil, the gas, and the money trail, because that's what it all comes down to, everybody.
It certainly does, everyone. And then what I'm going to do towards the tail end of that, Lisa, is tie it into the new world alliances Iran is making as the petrodollar continues to plummet, and also the proxy war of China versus Israel. Those two adversaries. But let's continue, Lisa, shall we?
Yeah. So, the oil, the gas, and the money trail. So before its removal from power, this is about the Anglo-Persian Oil Company, which you now know as BT. So before its removal from power, Mohammed Murs's administration, that's the one for the 50s, introduced a range of social measures and security.
Your voice is fading in and out, please.
Sorry?
Your voice was fading in and out.
Oh, is it? Shall I start again?
Give it another go.
Right. Before its removal from power, Mohammed Mossadegh's administration, the one for 1953 that got overturned, introduced a range of social and political measures such as social security, land reforms, and higher taxes, including the introduction of taxation on the rent of land. His government's most significant policy was the nationalisation of the Iranian oil industry, which had been built up by the British on Persian lands since 1913 through the Anglo-Persian Oil Company, that's APOC, later known as British Petroleum, which everybody will know as today. In the aftermath of the overthrow, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, who was the Shah, returned to power and negotiated the Consortium Agreement of 1954 with the British, which gave split ownership of the Iranian oil production between Iran and Western companies until 1979. And that's quite a significant date to bear in mind, because in 1979, when this agreement was due to expire, that's when we had the revolution in Iran. And you took it off the screen, so I'll just get it on my other screen quickly. Yeah. So yeah, the Shah, Britain and America had put that in place to secure the stronghold on Iranian oil from the West. He was exiled. Their hold on Iranian oil was further secured, and this came just as British Petroleum was privatised in 1979, a year after it acquired majority control of Standard Oil in Ohio. This gave the United States and the UK a secure hold on Iranian assets, which they were due to lose in 1979 after the agreements from 1953. That's all very important as you move forward. So British Petroleum merged with Amoco in 1998, becoming BP Amoco PLC, and acquired Arco and Burma Castrol in 2000, becoming BP PLC. That's just the history of BP keeping on acquiring other things and changing the names as time has gone forward. From 2003 to 2013, BP was a partner in the TNK BP joint venture in Russia. And from 2013 until Russia invaded Ukraine this year, they held a nearly 20% stake in Rosneft. PGSE Rosneft Oil Company is a Russian integrated energy company headquartered in Moscow. Rosneft specializes in the exploration, extraction, production, refining, transport, and the sale of petroleum, natural gas, and petroleum products. The company is controlled by the Russian government through the Rosneft holding company. So you've got to put this all together. There was involvement with Russia. Russia took it away when the war started in Ukraine. BP regained control of Iranian oil. After the thing that happened in 1979, they orchestrated the thing in the 50s. I think it's safe to say that they orchestrated what happened in 1979, and whether they're involved today, I'll leave that up to you. I've got no evidence. Don't come for me.
Right. Okay.
It all gets very complicated, but yeah. So as of December, this is about BP, as of December the 31st, 2018, BP had operations in nearly 80 countries, produced around 3.7 million barrels per day of oil equivalent, and had total reserves of 19.945 billion barrels of oil equivalent. The company has around 18,700 service stations worldwide, which operates under the BP brand worldwide, under the Amoco brand in the United States, and the Arrow brand in Germany. The largest division is BP America in the United States. BP is the fourth largest investor-owned oil company in the world by 2021 revenues, after ExxonMobil, Shell, and Total Energies. BP had a market capitalization of $98.36 billion as of the 15th of September this year, placing it 122nd in the world, and its Fortune Global 500 rank was 35th in 2022, with revenues of $164.2 billion US. So there's a lot of bloody money involved in this.
Yes, there is. Jim, is this kind of sparking some of the old memories, or maybe things that might have just bypassed your train of thought back then? As we
well, I expect that Russia and Iran are going to have increasingly tight relationships. Iran appears to be joining the Shanghai Cooperative Organization. BRICS is, of course, emerging. Russia is stronger economically. As you implied at the beginning, the dollar is disappearing from the international scene, and the consequences are going to be enormous for the quality of life in America, which is going to continue to drop, possibly precipitously in a very short period of time, Dean.
Right. Okay. And to add to that, Russia is also taking over the oil of the Venezuelans. I can't. What was his name? It escapes my mind right now. Jim, the former president, Oliver Stone loved him. What was his name?
Mercado.
Is it amazing? Jim and I know like a wealth of facts about everything. But it's
One
just
of those
that,
things.
you know,
Yeah, it'll come to
my
you later,
God.
and you'll be like, "Damn." Yeah.
Oh, it hurts. It hurts, and I can't figure this out.
Chavez, Hugo Chavez.
That's right. I was thinking Hugo, but that's the car. Okay, yes, Hugo Chavez. So you have Russia right now in you have Russia in Venezuela picking up their debt. They're now collecting their gold. There's a big gold heist all over the world right now. There's a new 49ers kind of panning for gold moment that we're witnessing, but it's actually the who's of nations that are actually the 49ers this time. You know, there's no clear distinction between many of these people, but so that's what I was going to add to that. But continue, Lisa.
Yeah, this is very interesting. I'll just put this on the screen. So, Iranian assets in the North Sea. The UK government and BP has given assets in British waters to the Iranian regime. Iran, for instance, has a 50% control of the Rum gas field in the North Sea and has partial stakes in other assets. However, in early 2019, under Trump, BP stopped work on the Rum gas field, citing the United States sanctions on Tehran as the reason for its suspension. They then sold their 50% stake in the company to another UK-based company called Cerkia Energy. However, very conveniently, after the US presidential election in 2019 and the installment of Democratic President Joe Biden in 2020, apparently these sanctions were lifted and the Cerkia Energy Company and Iran began production on the Rum field once again, which generated, I say huge, it was actually massive profits for both. That was all stopped under Trump, and as soon as Biden got in, it was allowed back into place again. So, yeah, that was convenient for them, wasn't it?
Sure
Everything
was.
seems to happen, and we're now going to go on to the 2009 protests, and particularly this, really quickly, this young lady right here. I've got one slide, and I believe Dean wants to talk about that more in depth because he is quite up on this particular story. So this young lady is called Neda Aga Sultan. And no, it's not, because that's wrong. Something went wrong with the slide. Yeah. I've got the wrong text on that slide.
Oh, okay, so
I'll just let Dean tell you about it because he knows all about it.
Well, this happened in 2009, and Jim, feel free to chime in if you can recollect the Arab Spring at the time. I think it was around that same period in which Jim and I later renamed what's happening to us the American Spring. So Neda Solomon, I believe that's her last name, was part of the, if I can recall, the Green kind of revolution. Ahmadinejad was president of Iran at the time. If you don't recall who that is, he's the guy that looked like Ringo Starr, but Iranian. If you want an illustration of how it was, and it was the same kind of scenario, Lisa. There was people protesting, and then randomly, the people, the morality police, if you will, shot her. And I remember because I was not really into anything we're talking about back then, and it was just I saw this beautiful girl, and she was dying, and she bled out in the street. Despite what that one heckler was saying, I'm not trying to sensationalize it. I'm just telling you the facts and the cold ones. And it really affected now the community in LA. The Persians started throwing protest in Los Angeles, and I was invited to go. And I wrote a song about her, which you might hear later down the road sometime. And it really affected me. It was a story, and then HBO wound up making, I think, a film about that. Indeed, now the detractors will say that it's all it's all fiction, but
Absolutely not.
Yeah, I mean, yes, the CIA gets involved in all these uprisings, on some level, but
MI5.
Yeah, MI5 too, but that's how bandits are. Jim, you want to add to that, because then that emboldened the Arab Spring, which we were told came at behest of a stupid cartoon. Yeah, the cartoon. Are we going to go over that next? But
we've got
Jim,
Arab
you want to chime in on the revolution of 2009 in Iran?
Well, a lot of these events are engineered or inspired by the CIA. There's no doubt about it. And therefore, that this, one commentator who's skeptical has reason to be open to the possibility that the CIA might be engineering events there. But it looks to me from everything Lisa's reporting that it's on the up and up. And this is a bona fide organic response to abuse by what we're calling the morality police. So, I'm certainly going to...
Even that name sticks in my throat, morality police.
Yeah.
These people got no idea what morality is or humanity.
Yeah,
it's standards, they're the political correctness people of Iran, but they operate in a heavier-handed way.
Yeah, so this is the Wahhabist Muslims now, notice as the Iranian and Saudi Arabian ties are now getting very close. I'm going to show you a video after this segment, just how close that is, which also signifies the total end of the petrodollar that Henry Kissinger negotiated on our behalf in 1972 with the Saudis, that they'll only trade oil with U.S.-backed dollars, and we will only buy oil from them.
And that's so important, Dean, because once Nixon took us off the gold standard, what kept the dollar afloat was its use for the reserve currency in international trade, especially related to oil, hence known as the petrodollar. And what's happening now is that America has dealt itself out of the international oil on the basis of a Green Deal on one hand and sanctions on Russia on the other, which was really committing a form of economic suicide. This is really incompetence or deliberate destruction of America, or a combination thereof.
Yeah, it's always a good combination. Yes. So, Lisa, let's continue into the Arab Spring, and then pay very close attention to what Lisa's about to share with everyone here tonight, because everything she's about to say is literally what Jim Fetzer and myself witnessed in real time while I was in LA, and he was over there in Wisconsin Islands, and we saw the George Floyd debacle that was used to then spark what they wanted to do, which we coined it first, Jim, as the American Spring. And they learned it and trained for it and rehearsed for it with the Arab Spring first. Go ahead, Lisa.
Right, so the Arab Spring, just a quick recap of what that was. The Arab Spring was a wave of pro-democracy protests and uprisings that took place in the Middle East and North Africa beginning in 2010 and 2011. Challenging some of the region's entrenched authoritarian regimes. The wave began when protests in Tunisia and Egypt toppled their regimes in quick succession, inspiring similar attempts in other Arab countries. Not every country saw success in the protest movement, however, and demonstrators expressing their political and economic grievances were often met with violent crackdowns by their country's security forces. And then that goes into how that benefited Iran, because it didn't really happen in Iran, but it did benefit Iran. So in 2011, both Washington and Iran, that was Washington under Obama, 2011, posited that Iran would benefit greatly from the collapse of the old Arab order. The Arab Spring, so the fall of many enemies of Iran, and the initial upheaval, and they were quite gleeful about that. They were looking at them thinking, oh yeah, this is going to get rid of the enemies of Iran and give us a stronger hold within this region.
Yeah, and John Brennan, the head of the CIA at this time in the United States, was leading the efforts. And this is when Twitter, everybody, became a prominence. Remember, it was Twitter that sparked the Arab Spring. Funny how that is. Twitter and all their bots.
So in the beginning, it was getting rid of the sort of enemies of Iran, or the people that Iran weren't that bothered about. But as it went on, it kind of backfired on them a little bit, and it sort of put into threat Syria, which was an ally of Iran. So amid the Middle East maelstrom, President Mohammed Ahmadinejad I don't know.
Ahmadinejad. Yes, I know. Yeah, it's
And Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, Tehran's terrible twins, suddenly look off balance, vulnerable, and at odds. Khomeini tried to initially hijack the Arab liberation movements in the name of Iran's illiberal theocratic brand, shamelessly sidestepping the brutal suppression of Iran's own democratic revolt in 2009, which we just discussed, which led to the death of many, including that girl that Dean spoke about. What I firmly announce is that a new movement with the grace of God has started in the region, he said in his Persian New Year message in March of that year. This widespread awakening of nations, which is directed towards Islamic goals, will definitely become victorious. So they were really up for it in the beginning until it started to threaten their allies. So significantly, Khomeini did not mention Syria, obviously, because that was their ally. But as unrest there and elsewhere had intensified, and essentially a secular, holy, temporal, democratic thrust of that unrest became undeniable, he and other Iranian leaders had largely abandoned the attempt to portray it as spreading a revolution. Instead, they complain about NATO intervention in Libya and the US-Israeli plot to topple Assad. And then we're going to finally...
Let me just say, I think parts of this may not be quite right.
Yes, tell us.
Syria is a democracy, so they can't be bringing democracy to Syria. The intervention in Syria was part of the effort to topple 7 governments in the next 5 years that was engineered by 9/11 by the Israeli conspiracy.
Wesley Clark. Wesley Clark said that.
That's right. Wesley Clark revealed it in 2007 at the Commonwealth Club in San Francisco. But so parts of this, I think, are not quite right. And, you know, the U.S. intervention, Israel wanted to use the United States as a military force to take out the modern Arab states that served as a counterbalance to Israel's domination of the entire region. You know, with Iraq and Libya ending with Syria and Iran. But because of the intervention of Russia and Iran on behalf of the Syrian government, which is, I
maybe worded that. What I meant was it started out as like toppling these like quite bad regimes, and it backfired.
Yeah.
Became a threat to places like Syria, which they weren't happy about. It doesn't initially.
So
far as I can tell, Bashar al-Assad is a good guy. He cares about the Syrian people. He's been demonized as other nationalist leaders, but he benefited from the assistance of Russia and Iran, and Russia still in Syria. Israel is still attacking. The problem is a whole lot in the Middle East has a whole lot more to do with Israel and not so much with Iran.
Jim, you're spot on, Jim, and so are you, Lisa. And what Lisa's saying is the road to hell is with good intentions. You know, just like, but there's a silent killer here too. It's Saudi Arabia. Remember, Saudi Arabia wanted that pipeline. They wanted to own the pipeline that goes through Syria. And they just so happened when they created the ISIS. Remember the ISIS guys? What happened to ISIS? Did they retire too, like the influenza did for 2 years? But ISIS was attacking all along the route that Saudi Arabia wanted that pipeline and to take it from Russia. See?
Yes. May say the war in Syria was really 2 competing pipelines, one Iranian.
Yes.
Would go through Syria to get to Europe, and another American that in an Israeli project. ISIS was made in America. There's no doubt about it. We created ISIS. We funded it.
The old saying is different. The old saying was all wars are started, over a woman, 2 guys fighting over a woman. No, it's not true. It's all wars are now started over pipes. Think about this.
It's all about money. It's all about money.
Pipe dreams. Okay, so what
do we have to do with oil? Yeah, natural resources and
exactly.
oil.
Why don't we, Lisa? And I think we have a few more to go. Let me look. If there's an inquiry
over the Crown Prince of Iran before we finish and do some questions. And
okay, yes. Okay, so everyone start lining up your inquiries because this is really, Jim. I don't know about you. This is really taking me back to that time of watching this unfold. It's making me relook at Iran Contra again. Oliver North. I actually met one of the guys from Air America that was flying the huge cargo planes from South America. I actually had a conversation with him. So this is just really some wild stuff here. But let's continue, Lisa, in the hunt for the mysteries. of Iran.
This is Reza Pahlavi, the Crown Prince of Iran. He is a descendant of the previous Shah that was toppled in 1979.
I can see the resemblance.
He's currently living in France. And so he was born in Tehran and is the eldest legitimate son of Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, the Shah of Iran, and Farah Pahlavi, the Shahbanu of Iran. Reza Pahlavi II is the first in line of succession to his late father, while his younger brother, Ali Reza Pahlavi, is second in line, or he was, until he committed suicide in 2011. Prior to his birth, the presumptive heir was Patrick Ali Pahlavi, the Crown Prince's cousin. In February 2019, he launched an initiative called the Phoenix Project of Iran. According to the National Interest, this is designed to bring various strands of the opposition closer to a common vision for a post-clerical Iran. A report published by the Brookings Institution in 2009 said that Pahlavi lacked an organized following within Iran, since there was no serious monarchist movement in Iran itself. The report described Pahlavi as having little in common with the intellectuals and students who make up the core of the reform movement. During the 2017-18 protests, some videos on social media showed demonstrators chanting slogans in favour of his grandfather and calling for his return. On many occasions, the videos indicated the royalist slogans and prompts others in the crowd to shout the slogans down. After the January 2018 protests, the pro-monarchy sentiment had a resurgence in Iran, and it seems like it was all contrived. Next one. In 1986, the Reagan administration authorized the CIA to support and fund Iranian exiles, including Pahlavi. The agency transmitted his 11-minute speech, during which he vowed, "I will return to Iranian television by pirating its frequency." The Tower Commission report, published in 1987, also acknowledged that the CIA was behind this event, while a group in Paris calling itself Flag of Freedom had taken responsibility for the act in September 1986. James Mann wrote in February 1989 that when he asked the CIA about whether they would help Pahlavi, they refused to comment, and a spokesperson of the agency told him, "We would not confirm nor deny an intelligence matter." In 2006, Connie Brooke of The New Yorker wrote that Pahlavi, having had CIA funding for a number of years in the 80s, but ended after the Iran-Contra scandal. Andrew Friedman of Haverford College states that Pahlavi began cooperation with the CIA after he met with director William J. Casey and received a monthly stipend. Citing Pahlavi's financial advisor and other observers, Friedman also connects his residence in Great Falls, Virginia, to its proximity to the George Bush Center for Intelligence, headquarters of the service. In 2009, Pahlavi denied receiving US government aid or any foreign aid in an interview with the New York Times. He said, No, I don't rely on any sources other than my own compatriots," and denied allegations of working with the CIA, calling the allegations absolutely and unequivocally false. However, in 2017, he told John Gambrell of the Associated Press, "My focus right now is on liberating Iran, and I will find any means that I can without compromising the national interests and independence with anyone who is willing to give us a hand, whether it is the US or the Saudis or the Israelis or whomever it is." And then it goes into the CIA and MI5, and that'll wrap it all up. Do you got any comments on that before we go into that bit?
Yeah. Let's hold on for. I have to mention this, and Jim, I know you're well versed on this. Gary Webb, everybody. Gary Webb was a very, very courageous journalist who really exposed a lot of these ties, and somewhere around the 1980s, going into the 90s. And he really kind of just blew the lid off of Iran-Contra, which was really the first time that Americans are like, "Oh my God, this is worse than the Watergate Hotel. This is bigger than we realized." But he was killed, wasn't he, Jim Fetzer?
Yes.
Shot twice in the head with a shotgun. How is that possible? How is that possible?
Obvious suicide, Dean.
Yeah, it didn't actually
Yeah,
have to commit
exactly.
suicide, isn't it?
Yeah,
Just to
it's
make
terrible.
sure, get another time. Yeah.
Terrible. Okay, so we have one more section.
Well, this
left.
is clearly a CIA op. See, the CIA loves having strongmen, authoritarians in charge, because then they know who they have to bribe and manipulate to make things happen. If the democracy messy, they don't like that. So, you know.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Like, calling it Operation Phoenix, that was also the name of the assassination program in South Vietnam. That is a long lineage.
Oh, that's going deep, Jim. I like that. Oh, yes. We can get into the golden triangle of the Ho Chi Minh golden heroin triangle.
Yeah, I have spoken to the people that have got contacts in Iran, and there's quite a widely held belief in Iran that the CIA and MI5, specifically Britain and America intelligence agencies, are planning to reinstall him, because whatever they done in the 70s, that's not working for. Like they keep chopping and changing as long as it's financially and suiting them with the oil and the gas and whatever. They're looking. And they're supporting
to do that, they'd have to get rid of the Ayatollahs. It might be, therefore, they have an interest in this movement involving the women, even if it's bona fide and manipulating it, taking it over.
Yeah.
But I don't think the Iranian people would be keen on this at all, but I can certainly see the CIA's interest in wanting to have it happen.
It's true. Because also they have, which I'll show, the Saudi alliance and the Chinese alliance with Iran is very, very strong. Basically the entire world order has just repositioned itself, but we're probably not going to make that official in our books to 10, 15 years from now. But you're seeing it real time now. This is history.
Well, he's actually coming out strong at the moment and speaking up for the Iranian people and speaking out in support of these protests and disgusted at what's happening. So it's all very contrived.
That's very disturbing, by the way.
They're going to put a Shah, the son of the Shah, they're going to put back in there. Can you imagine that?
I don't think the Iranian people would be keen on that. Not the older, for sure.
Yeah,
they're not keen on what they've got at the moment. So
the new ones might. Okay, Lisa, let's finish off the MI5 and MI6. Who are the intelligence, FBI, CIA of England, everybody, who you really don't often hear about, only in the Ian Fleming films, played by the great George Lazenby of, James Bond. Oh, yes, and Roger Moore and Sean Connery, too. Okay.
There have been several others. Yes.
This is
George Lazenby is a great one, Jim.
Timothy Dalton also.
Timothy Dalton, and yes, we have a lot of our favorites.
My wife's favorite is the last. We've not even named yet. Go ahead.
Yes. We'll have a James Bond party soon, I swear.
This is the final bar. There's a picture left on the final slide. The CIA and MI5. Now, I do apologise. I could not find. I don't think they've made it yet. There's not an actual MI5 logo for King Charles. So we've got the Elizabeth Royal one. They've not made it yet. Whether they're going to bother, who knows? So if indeed the CIA is involved in trying to reinstate the Shah into Iran, then you can be guaranteed that MI5 go hand in hand with that. It was both agencies whose joint interference has shaped Iran into what it is today, and they did it both for one thing: money. The oil and gas markets are multi-billion dollar industries, and the governments of UK and America used their intelligence agencies to install whichever government in Iran would benefit them financially, regardless of the effect of that regime on the Iranian people. Coups were staged, votes were faked, elections were stolen, propaganda was shoved down the collective throats of the world, all with one goal in mind: money. It is widely speculated throughout Iran that the UK government, along with others, have plans to facilitate the reinstatement of the Shah and topple the current regime. Not because of the persecution of the Iranian people, because it benefits the pockets of the elites in their countries. They don't care that these women are being murdered. They just want to do it because they want to have a stronghold on the oil and the gas industries. Whether or not the Shah is a better choice for Iran, it's not ours to say. I have no idea. It's not a very good choice at the moment, but I mean, I wasn't there at the time when the Shah was in power. It's probably like just out of the frying pan into the fire. Jim probably can answer that more.
Yeah, Jim can answer that. So let's have an open discussion now. Let's let's pan for gold, Lisa, for inquiries, comments, concerns, or
it was
rude
the
comments.
CIA and MI5 that put the Ayatollah in place. Whether that's the best choice, I have no idea. I mean, in any country, either choice is a bad choice. So.
Yeah, they own the casino. Jim, you want to comment on that? Because, MI5, MI6 are just, they were renowned.
This recent business involving women's rights and so forth, I don't have a sense the Iranian people are all that upset with Ayatollahs or Khomeini. I mean, I think that's all been pretty much coherent for the most part, but the CIA and MI6 are endlessly wanting to interfere.
Right.
So that's unsurprising in the extreme. And if there's a bona fide, legitimate protest, they would want to exploit and exaggerate and
all the time.
benefit from it. So that sounds to me like where things stand now. And I can therefore see why our initial complaint may have a bit more to it than we might want to acknowledge. Yeah. I'm going to see what I can do to nail this down, by the way.
Yeah, the people that I've spoke to are actually living in the UK now. They've still got family in Iran, but they left Iran because of this regime. Different people because they didn't agree with the regime.
It's like the anti-Castro Cubans that came to United States, you know. I mean,
but they have got contacts in Iran, and there's people in Iran who are happy with the regime, and there's people who are not. Just like in America, you've got people that are happy with the administration.
Here's what it is, Jim. It's a generational thing. It's a generational gap that you're describing, because we have that here. There's people that they want the old neocon guard, like the Mittens, Romneys of the world, to take charge, right? Then the new type of conservative types, they want a Trump type, a DeSantis type, a Ron Paul type. You see, it's a generational gap, I think, that is not often expressed. But
by the way, Trump's abandonment of the Iran deal and his sanctions on Iran were stupid. I cannot begin to tell you how disappointed I was with his taking those actions. And I think those who demonize Iran are completely off the mark. But these latest developments are troubling, and I want to sort that out and see how it all fits together.
So here's the big secret about the Iranian Trump deal that you talked about. It was set in place, Jim. There's a lot of political theater. We covered it at the time. The big explosion in Lebanon from 2 years ago, if everyone recalls, that huge warehouse, those were weapons that were being hidden by the Iranian negotiators at the time for leverage in negotiations and discussions. If you can imagine what that's like at the top of the world economics there. So they exploded because Trump made a call to Israel, who at that time I started figuring out he had the blackmail on Benjamin Netanyahu. There's a lot blackmail there to have. He called in. Israel had sent a F-22 around there. They shot a K-30 missile right into that warehouse, is what was directly told to me straight from the grill.
I'm sure those weapons were for Hezbollah, which actually defeated Israel in Lebanon. And the Israelis, of course, regard Iran as their arch enemy. So
that's right. That's right.
Trump,
and China's exploiting
Israel, but you're suggesting here he called on Israel to perform an act, in my opinion, he probably ought not to have done, just as taking out Soleimani was insulting and outrageous and an international crime for which I can never forgive him. That doesn't mean he would be overwhelmingly preferable to what we have in terms of in Washington today, which is out to destroy the country.
It's a dirty business negotiating. Go ahead, Lisa.
I just wanted your opinion. I mean, the mainstream media is not really going into this at all. But I did find one magazine cover from Washington Examiner. I don't know how reliable that is. I don't know. It's American. And it's this. Betraying Iran's dissidents. Biden keeps throwing the mullahs a lifeline. That's the only thing I could find. company that was a
Well, Biden isn't actually doing anything, but you know.
yeah, the Biden
But
administration.
I get it. Yeah, that's all very interesting.
Right.
Yeah. You're making me
Here's-
much more current now. I'm having to come to grips with the recent developments that, frankly, I had not been confronting.
Me too,
before,
Jim.
so I'm glad for this.
Same here, Jim. We're on that same train. Okay, here's some inquiries from this effective audience around the world, and thank you everyone who has stayed with us on this journey. I mean, when Jim Fetzer's learning something, that should tell you that it has been a great presentation on behalf of the Lisa Duthie Foundation here. Thank you so much. Here's Lacrise.
A lot of help for people who have been in Iran and got family there. So
Yes. Lacrise says, can you explain more about the about Green Deal, Fetzer? Because it's my country, Iceland. We hear nothing except Green Deal. Yeah, let's get into that. In Iceland too, just so you know, I think it was one of my associates said one of the planes or ships that blew up that pipeline just 2 weeks ago, it originated from Iceland. We're finding out. So Iceland Go ahead, Jim.
The Green Deal is based on pseudoscience claiming that the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere affects the temperature of Earth, which it does not. CO2 is emitted by many sources, including gasoline engines and so forth, but CO2 is indispensable to life. It actually cools Earth in multiple different dimensions. It's reprocessed by plants through photosynthesis into oxygen. If you go back to 600 million years of Earth's history, you find there's no correlation between the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere and the temperature of Earth. That means there can be no causal relation. Even when there is a correlation, arguments can be made about causation, as with vaccines and autism, which clearly are correlated. The more vaccine, the more autism, the less. And it is, in my judgment, clearly a causal connection, but they can argue endlessly. The fact is, though, the Green New Deal was instrumented to try to promote destroying the American economy by denying us a basic energy. Look, it turns out gas and oil is unlimited in resources. It's naturally produced by Earth. It's not a fossil fuel. That is an antiquated account of the source of oil, but it's naturally produced by Earth. And we have become increasingly efficient. We have massive automotive and gasoline-powered engines. If you introduce a Green New Deal, it's going to electricity, requires gas, oil, nuclear to produce the electricity, and all kinds of mining and slavery.
Electric cars suck too, huh, Jim?
Well, they can't even keep the lights on in some areas. They can't provide the energy just to keep your houses warm during the winter. So how are they going to power all these electric
very bad news, but you have the progressive wing of the Democrat Party, they're using it like a club. And promoting the end of the Earth is about to occur if we don't suddenly ban gas and oil, which actually leads to the destruction of the economy. So it's really something being promoted by the Rothschild family and the Great Reset. It's a false belief being used very effectively, like the false belief.
It's all about fear, isn't it?
People weren't dying from the pandemic, but they're dying like mad from the vax.
Here's some inquiries. This one's for Lisa. Lisa, we haven't gotten any global news from mainstream media in years. That's why we are all here. Yes, thank you, Karen.
They only tell you what they want you to know. Or what they want you to
Yes, it's true. That's true. A lot of people watch us, Jim, just to find out what the hell is happening in their own countries because they can't.
Bear in mind, the Rothschilds own the AP and Reuters, and news in the United States is dependent on the AP and Reuters for international, and it's all filtered by the Rothschilds in Israel. So you're getting a very atrophied and biased view, and the mainstream media in the United States is dominated by dual U.S.-Israeli citizens.
And who would have thought, too, Jim, that CNN has been using the satellite dishes of the Pentagon this entire time? What does that tell us?
It's all about money. It's all about profit. It's all about control and what they can control. I mean, it's exactly the same story with the gas and oil as it is with the human trafficking. The human trafficking is also a multi-billion-dollar pound industry, and that's why they're not going to do anything about it because it's making them money.
Karen says, sounds like MI5, CIA equals NATO. You know, the case can be made.
Yes. Except
Jim,
now you got the Rothschilds wanting to control the whole. They have 80% of the world's wealth. They want to be 100%, and they want to decimate the world's population. We're undergoing the most extreme threat humanity has ever faced today.
It's democide. Jim, I want to address this real quick. This is a very good point. Karen said that MI6 CIA equals NATO. For the longest time, when I hear about America is doing this war in Yemen, America is doing this war here at the end of the earth, I've often thought it has always been the CIA who has no oversight, mind you. Central Intelligence has no oversight. I'm betting and willing to guess and say that the same applies to MI5, MI6 in England. They have no oversight with your council members in your cities.
Well, they do what the hell they want, don't they?
So we have rogue agencies, cowboys. We have the Wild Wild West in both of our countries. Who knows what Canada has?
One of the reasons Jack was taken out, he wanted to shatter the CIA into 1,000 pieces. And
that's right.
Had he lived, he might well have done so. Hence, the CIA threw in with the military-industrial complex, the joint anti-Castro Cubans, the mafia,
Yep.
Yeah. Here's
Lisa Duthie knows her facts.
For Lisa.
Yeah, we have a lot of Lisa fans here tonight. I'm one of them too, Jim, just so we're all clear on that. And then why don't we just take one more question and we're going to call it and give our last thoughts. A lot of people say we're being shadow banned, hardcore. Yeah, you better believe it. Rage Against the Machine. Lacquer says in Iceland we have pure energy there. Yeah, is that true? And also amazing festivals.
Energy is the pure.
Yes, they do. Jana Bradshaw says Green New Deal will destroy the horse industry. Yes, it will. That's why cold fusion, everybody, is the future. It's the way to go. That's why the DOJ, I believe, just 10 days ago, invested in a quasi-cold fusion new strategy, which totally decimates the stupid Green New Deal, which is nothing but a Archie comic book on just completely neoliberalism steroids at this point. Okay. So anyways, let's kind of close it off here. Oh, yes, and you make a great point here. MI5, MI6, Mossad, CIA, all agencies for the elites, AK, deep state, not for their country. Yeah, CIA was never intended to be here for this long. FDR put them in as the OS, headed and spearheaded by Julia Childs, out of all people. Can you believe that one, Jim?
Harry Truman said the greatest mistake he made in his career was establishing the CIA, and he got that right.
God,
they were the OS. Atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Well, he was getting petitioned by Einstein and the who's who at that time, and he should have just stuck with playing piano. Anyways, let's kind of give a final thought, Lisa, as the night's getting Arabian Nights at this point. Why don't we start with you? Final thoughts, Lisa, as we wind down this incredible journey you took us all on tonight, and I'm going to have to rewatch it myself,
Yeah, there are people who've got opinions on both sides, whether the current regime under the Ayatollah or the Shah under the monarchy was the best regime for Iran. I can't answer that for you because I think that regardless, just like you've got in the UK, no matter which party's in power, same in America, you've got corruption. It's like inherent. It comes through the deep state. You've got corruption going through whatever regime you've got in power. But the main thing to take away from this is these women and these children in Iran are standing up for their freedom and their right to just basically live their lives. They're very intelligent, well-educated women, and they are being treated like second-class citizens. They're being raped, they're being murdered for no reason by these morality police, and they're very bloody brave at the moment because they're going out there, they've got no weapons, they're being shot at by this authoritarian police force that started in 2006, and it needs to end. This should not be in any country in the world. Women fear every day of their lives that they're going to be captured and raped by somebody that's in authority. I thought this was something that happened hundreds of years ago. This happened in Scotland in the 1600s by the lairds and the English government gave land to in Scotland. They were raped. This shouldn't be happening in 2022. So regardless of what regime it's under, or whether who knows exactly what's going on, or if the police are just a law unto themselves, I don't know. But kudos to these women, and we need to all stand behind them, whether no matter what sex you are, because they're getting murdered, and there's figures saying at least 400 up to getting on for 1,000 now, and that is ridiculous just since September, and it needs to end.
Absolutely. Jim Fetzer, the great Jim Fetzer, final thought on this incredible Persian journey that we went and followed Lisa into the depths of the Saudi Arabian deserts to the Persian mountains right there in Tehran. What say you? Final thoughts, Jim Fetzer?
Well, the natural resources of Iran have been coveted by the U.S., the UK, the oil industry, as long as we've had them. And, the CIA, very manipulative. How much of this is organic and bona fide? I'm very disturbed by all the reports. Lisa certainly presented a powerful case. I'm going to do my best to confirm exactly what's going on there with people I know and trust. I do continue to have faith in Iran as a great country. It is Israel's enemy, so you can count on a whole lot of biased information coming out about Iran if Israel has anything to say about it. And because of the dominance of the international press by the Rothschild owning both AP and UPI, you can count on a lot of false information. So the question here becomes sorting out exactly what's going on, what's true and what's propaganda. And here I'd say I'm playing catch up, and I'm very glad to have had this opportunity to hear more about these latest developments, which, of course, by any measure are profoundly disturbing.
Indeed. Okay, Jim Fetzer, that's a hard act to follow, both of you. Good luck to me. Anyways, here's my quick final thought on this incredible journey. Like Jim had mentioned, and maybe many of you out there, that I went into this kind of blindfolded, which is the way I wanted it to be. And, my objective in the beginning, my thesis was to display that when we hear about these countries, whether it's Iran, whether it's China, whether it's New York, and just how bad it is over there, we have to distinguish and find that discernment and say to ourselves, oh, it's the people who are masquerading as maybe the Iranian governments or the Chinese government, or in this case, our case over here, the American government. It all leads to the different families that we saw in the Godfather series that are intertwined in a very, very deadly battle for dominance over world power, and to grab the narrative and the mantle now as the dollar is now falling and the new financial reset is looming around the corner. The question remains is who is going to take that baton and run with it to the victory line? Is it going to be the central banking cartel that John F. Kennedy was fighting, that are still in power, when the Third Reich just exchanged uniforms and put new ones on and look like all of us? Or is it going to be the nation states who are not necessarily dying right now? They're actually rising up together. In fact, we are the counterculture. Can you believe that, Jim? Jim and I are the counterculture right now in this time a day. We are the counterculture for saying, no, we don't want these wild kabuki theater plots, and we won't accept it. So when we do look at protests like these, and it's very heartfelt, but we're also aware that that's an opportunity for the communist, the CIA, and the West intelligence agencies to sneak in there and shift it and posture it a certain way to their means and objectives. It's exactly what happened in the 1960s here in the United States. Wherever there was a protest, wherever there was a decry, just a crime, or any kind of humble moment of unity, when Dr. King was around, well, guess who was there as well? The Communist Party and all their members trying to infiltrate and steer it, just like they did with LGBTQ, like they did with the Black Lives Matter. Pick a group, because there's only one right that matters around here. And just like Dr. Ron Paul said, and that is human rights. When you start breaking it up here and there, that's when it becomes lobbyists and a battle to control who's going to get the most fruits of their efforts, or their propaganda in this case. Anyways, we're going to leave it there, and just incredible, Jim. I'm going to have to watch this later tonight myself, and I learned a lot, and we hope you did too. So, Lisa,
we might have an update at some stage and do a part 2 once Jim's got in touch with people, and we see what else happens with the protests, the current protests. But yeah, we'll certainly keep you updated on what's going on.
Jim, let's do a follow-up to that. We'll do a huge follow-up if we can. So anyways, all right, I'm going to say goodnight to everyone. So on behalf of Lisa Duthie, Jalumbo, the great Jim Fetzer, I'm Dean Ryan saying thank you for sharing a bit of your night with us here at the lounge. We hope this was meaningful to you and yours, and you take this message and spread it like wildfire, like liberty and freedom in the hearts and minds of free humanity across the world. Until next time, always remember to stay tuned and stay awake. Good night, everybody.
Good night.